Hello, this is Jake McKee, and today I'm going to do my presentation on the Sixth Amendment, so let's get started. So first, I'm going to talk about the amendment simplified. First, you got the right to an attorney. Anybody who is being charged with a crime has the right to an attorney, and if they cannot afford an attorney, then one will be provided to them by the government. The defendant also has a right to waive the right to an attorney. Second, we have a speedy and public trial. This is put in place to make sure that the potential criminal is not incarcerated prior to receiving a trial for an extended amount of time. Furthermore, if it were to take a while to have a trial, the witnesses may not remember the event as well. Having a public trial ensures that there is complete transparency throughout the trial, and so that the counsel, judges, and jurors are doing their job properly according to law. And third, we'll have impartial jury. An impartial jury is put in place so that the jury does not have any preconceived opinion about the defendant. Rather, the jury only looks at the evidence that is presented to them throughout the trial. The prosecution and the defense have the opportunity to participate in the jury selection process. If they have a feeling if one of the jury would be biased, they have the opportunity to say so. And I'm just mostly focused on these three parts throughout the presentation. So now we have the timeline of the amendment. In 1930, it was established that defendants can give up their rights to a jury trial. In Patton v. United States, the U.S. Supreme Court decides that defendants can give up their right to a jury trial and choose to have the judge alone decide their guilt or innocence. This choice must be made with the understanding of what they are giving up. That is, it must be an intelligent or knowing choice. In the federal courts and in some state courts, the prosecution and the judge also must agree not to have a jury. In 1971, jury trials are not required for juveniles. Although previous U.S. Supreme Court decisions afford juvenile defendants many of the same constitutional protections as adults, in McKeever v. Pennsylvania, the court rules that juveniles do not have a Sixth Amendment right to a jury if tried in juvenile court. Additionally, the court noted that because juvenile prosecution is not considered either a civil or criminal case, the whole of the Sixth Amendment does not necessarily apply. As such, there is no requirement for a jury trial in juvenile cases. So we're going to talk about that more in the next slide, more about that case. And then in 1974, we have the Speedy Trial Act of 1974, of course. The Speedy Trial Act sets forth two clear time limits. An information or indictment must follow within 30 days of arrest, and a trial must begin within 70 days of indictment or arraignment. Once the charge has been filed, that is when the 70 days start. The trial can start later if the lawyer is still finding evidence or there are issues within the case. Next, we'll have important court cases. So this is probably the most important one. This is Gideon versus Wainwright, 1963. Gideon was charged with breaking and entering with the intent to commit a misdemeanor, which is a felony under Florida law. At trial, Gideon appeared in court without an attorney. In open court, he asked the judge to appoint counsel for him because he could not afford an attorney. The trial judge denied Gideon's request because Florida law only permitted the appointment of counsel for poor defendants charged with capital offenses. So, pretty much, it went to the Supreme Court, and they ruled in his favor. You have to appoint someone counsel. So, I think that's a very good thing. Next, we have Miranda versus Arizona, 1966. On March 13, 1963, police arrested Ernesto Miranda on charges of rape and kidnapping after a witness identified him in Phoenix, Arizona. During his 2-hour interrogation, police did not advise Miranda of his constitutional rights to an attorney, nor against incrimination. Nonetheless, he signed a written confession affirming knowledge of these rights and admitting to crimes. This confession led to a June 27, 1963 conviction of rape and kidnapping, as well as sentenced Miranda to a maximum of 55 years in prison. Miranda's lawyer, Alvin Moore, appealed this case to the Arizona decision, arguing that police had not violated Miranda's constitutional rights in procuring a confession without the presence of a lawyer. This eventually went on to the Supreme Court, and they ruled differently on June 13, 1966, nearly 3 years after the original indictment. It held that presenting Miranda's confession as evidence violated his constitutional rights under the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. Now we'll take a closer look into McKeever v. Pennsylvania.
In Duncan v. Louisiana, decided in 1968, the Supreme Court held that the Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial in federal criminal cases also applies to state criminal cases through the 14th Amendment. 3 years later, in McKeever v. Pennsylvania, the court explored whether that right should also extend to state juvenile court proceedings. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania separately charged Joseph McKeever, 16, and Edward Terry, 15, with various felonies and misdemeanors. Each boy unsuccessfully requested a jury trial, and family court judges subsequently adjudged them delinquent in public hearings. The state of North Carolina charged Barbara Burris and 45 other children aged between 11 and 15 with various misdemeanors. The juvenile court judge denied their attorney's request for jury trials and declared all the children delinquent in closed hearings. Pennsylvania's Superior Court and Supreme Court affirmed McKeever's and Terry's adjudications. North Carolina's Court of Appeals and Supreme Court also affirmed the adjudications against Burris and the other 45 children. Each child appealed to the United States Supreme Court, arguing that the 6th and 14th Amendments guarantee the right to a jury trial in juvenile court.
Okay, so there we go. No Sixth Amendment for juveniles. Now we'll move on to issues with the amendment. So first, I noted, this is kind of like personal opinion, but I think we could do better on this. The public defender may not represent the defendant well. The goal of providing equal representation did not come with equal funding. Public defenders' offices are chronically short of money and often lack funds for specialized expert testimony or even basic forensic testing. A side effect is that public defenders may spend very little time trying cases and more time discussing plea deals with prosecutors and clients. Plead guilty, but with lesser charges. So next, experience, still with that first point, is the experience of the public defender. You also have no guarantee that the public defender has experience handling your type of case. For instance, if you are facing charges of assault, you won't know beforehand whether your lawyer has ever worked with such a case. Many of the cases public defenders handle are misdemeanors, and if you are facing felony charges, they may not have the experience to represent you effectively. Some attorneys who work as public defenders are fresh out of law school and are using the opportunity to gain experience so that they can get hired by a private practice. So in other words, if you had like a Jeffrey Feiger or something, I got no affiliation with him, but if he's representing you compared to a public defender, then public defender provided by the government, then you kind of figure how that one's going to go. Next point, innocent people held and innocent people incarcerated. First, we'll talk about the innocent people that are held before trial. They are held for months and there is nothing they can do about it. The evidence that is being used can be technological, so it may take a long time for the prosecution or defense, to get the evidence. And once they have that evidence, they have to show show it to the defense for them to refute it, which can take a while. Now to the innocent people incarcerated. Studies estimate that about 4 to 6% of people who are incarcerated are innocent, with almost 2 million people in our prisons and jails. That means that tens of thousands of incarcerated people were wrongfully convicted, which is kind of scary. But I just think that there's something we can do about it. I'm not the guy to come up with that plan, or I don't have the answers to it, but I mean, 4 to 6% seems like a good amount of innocent people wrongfully convicted, which is terrible and it's scary. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. There's my references. And I know you've been asking people at the end of their presentations, what they like learned about the multimedia presentation, and I've always wanted to do like YouTube and stuff, and since I'm doing this presentation virtually, it will help me like make videos myself and post them to YouTube because I never knew how to do it, so I think that'll be useful for me. Thank you for listening and have a good day.